Okay, let's unpack this. There's a question that consistently pops up in the digital asset world, and it's this. Does the fintech company Ripple truly own the XRP ledger?
Yeah, that one comes up a lot. There's definitely confusion out there.
Right, so our mission for this deep dive is to, cut through some of that FUD, use the sources we've gathered, and try to give a clear, nuanced answer.
Absolutely. And it's definitely not a simple yes or no.
Exactly. Get ready for some maybe surprising facts here. It's a pretty intricate relationship we're looking at.
Well, if we start connecting the dots, looking at the bigger picture, the statement XRPL isn't owned by Ripple, that's technically and legally correct. The XRP ledger itself, it's open source technology. It's decentralized.
Okay, so not owned is technically right. But what stops Ripple, given their history with it, from just calling the shots or, shutting it down? How does the network actually stay independent from them?
Right, that's really the core of it. The XRPL, it operates on a pretty unique consensus protocol. It doesn't work like, say, Bitcoin mining. It relies on a network of independent validators.
Validators, yeah.
And here's the critical part. To make any change, like a new feature, or even to halt transactions, you need an 80% supermajority.
80% of independent validators.
Exactly. 80% have to agree. Even Ripple, can't just force something through. They don't have that kind of control.
Ah.
So that's the aha moment, maybe. They can't control it unilaterally, but their influence, that's undeniable. And that's where it gets complex.
Influence versus control. That's a really important distinction for anyone trying to get their head around the XRPL. So if direct control's off the table, where does this profound influence actually stem from? Our sources point to a few key areas.
Absolutely. It really starts right at the beginning of the XRPL's genesis. You see, 80 billion XRP out of the total 100 billion were initially gifted to Ripple when the ledger launched.
80 billion.
Well,
Wow.
It's an almost unbelievable amount. An astronomical initial endowment, really. Think about it. They were the main beneficiaries right from the network's creation.
And today?
Today, they still hold a massive amount, roughly 38.8 billion XRP. Plus, they have about 1 billion released monthly from escrow.
Right, the escrow releases.
So this isn't just like having a large stake. It gives them immense financial leverage.
Yeah.
For market making, funding projects, strategic investments in the ecosystem. It lets them shape things in a way few others can.
That's incredible financial power in the market. Really highlights how unique this network setup is.
Okay, beyond the massive holdings, what about their role in the actual code and development?
That's the other major piece, the technical side. Ripple is hands down the primary contributor to Ripple. That's the core software for the XRPL. They employ the leading architects, the key developers, people like David Schwartz, who's been there since the early days.
So they're literally building it day to day. They are the driving force behind its evolution, its future features. And they're not just passively contributing code. They're actively architecting the ecosystem's future. You look at their strategic moves, like the wormhole integration that brings multi-chain interoperability. That's big.
Yeah, connecting it outwards.
Or pushing for an EVM-compatible sidechain. That's a clear play to attract Ethereum developers, right?
Yep.
Extending their reach.
Makes sense.
And now, launching their own stablecoin, RLUSD, backed by US dollars. That cements them right at the center of on-ledger liquidity and potentially mainstream use. These are all very intentional steps to grow and steer the network.
So if Ripple has this much sway through the XRP they hold, the code they write, these big strategic plays, it makes you wonder, how does the outside world see it, especially the legal system? Did the courts ever weigh in on this kind of influence without, direct ownership?
That's actually a fascinating part of the story. The legal side has, in a way, reinforced this nuance. That landmark 2023 ruling in the U.S., the SEC versus Ripple case, Judge Annalisa Torres made a really crucial distinction.
Oh, yeah, I remember the headlines.
She drew a line between XRP sold programmatically on public exchanges and Ripple's direct sales to institutional buyers. And she ruled that XRP itself, when sold on those secondary markets, wasn't an investment contract, not a security.
That was huge news.
It was pivotal because it legally underscored the network's independence from the company, at least in the public market context, despite Ripple's foundational role.
Okay, so bringing it all together then, what we've unpacked seems to be this. The XRP ledger is, well, definitely not Ripple's property. They can't just shut it down or change the rules because of that 80% validator consensus you mentioned.
Correct.
But Ripple is, without a doubt, its most important, most influential player. It's this kind of unprecedented symbiosis, almost, in the decentralized space.
That's exactly it. a relationship that really defies the old definitions of ownership and control. And, this raises a really important question for you, the listener, to think about. As the XRP ledger keeps evolving, you see initiatives around institutional DeFi, CBDC platforms using its tech. How will this unique mix, this blend of corporate stewardship and open, decentralized tech, how will it redefine what ownership and control even mean in the future of finance? It's quite a fascinating experiment playing out right now.